Let's talk about trauma and how then trauma can develop into post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is what we will talk about today. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Sylwia. I'm a psychotherapist. So, trauma. Usually when we think about trauma, we think about something huge, something a once-off event like war or car accident or tsunami, something really huge that impacts our life immediately. But trauma doesn't have to involve physical attack. Sometimes trauma is something like abuse, something like neglect. So not often trauma is something that happened to us. Sometimes trauma is what didn't happen to us. Also, trauma is not always directive. Sometimes even for us witnessing something really stressful can cause us develop trauma or PTSD. So it's not really that once-off event. Sometimes trauma can be happening for many years and we internalize it as normal. This is part of our life. We don't even know that it was actually trauma. So if I were to summarize what trauma is in one sentence, trauma is something very, very stressful that impacts our belief on ourselves, but also on the world around us. We feel very unsafe. We feel very threatened by the situations, and we're afraid for our life, but also for life for others. Sometimes, as I said, it's not what happened to us. Sometimes it's about what didn't happen. As children, we don't really question how we developed, how we were growing up. It was our norm, so we never question it. But as a result of being and living in that trauma, we have developed different coping mechanisms. We have developed different situations, like coping mechanisms on situations that are very stressful, just to survive what was happening. So trauma will impact our identity, will impact who we are. Trauma will impact how we even perceive what we can, what we cannot do, what is worth. If you feel like life is a dangerous place to be, if you don't trust people, if you feel like people are very judgmental, and basically there's a huge feeling of fear or unsafety wrapped up around you all the time, this means you're in survival mode. This means you probably have experienced some kind of trauma in your life. 80% of our population, which I personally believe it's more than 80%, have experienced trauma. And one in every 3 children experienced childhood trauma before the age of 18, that just shows you how trauma is huge when it comes to mental health, but yet it's so misunderstood, so ignored, so disregarded. We don't really understand the effect of trauma yet. As a society, we have a lot to learn when it comes to trauma. But trauma also can develop into PTSD. And when you will feel constantly unsafe, when you will feel afraid, something, as I said, you might witness something that you then become having nightmares, flashbacks. You will have difficulty with concentrating on anything. you will be trying to avoid your emotions. That could be a sign of PTSD. And this will make your life difficult. Trauma makes our life difficult. PTSD is even more intensive. And I will give you the signs of PTSD in a minute. But before we even go there, I want you to be aware that once you have trauma or PTSD, you will be getting triggered. And those triggers can be anything from anything that you see, anything that you hear, anything that you might feel, smell, situations, events, places, media. A lot of things can actually trigger you. So the minute you're being triggered, you're no longer living in the present moment. You're constantly you're back to the traumatic experience. You're back to where that trauma was happening. And then you're starting to act like you're in there, even though you're not, but you're losing somehow connection with the world around you. You're losing connection with the present moment. You constantly feel like you're at danger, ready to get attacked. You might want to push those memories. You might want to push your emotions. But you can only push for so long until you get triggered again and again. So it's better to get help. It's better to talk about it. It's better to noticing what's happening. Don't normalize what you have experienced, whether it was direct or indirect, whether it was something that you witnessed or something that you have heard of. If it's affecting you, it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to talk to your friends, talk to your family member, talk to a therapist, talk to your GP, anyone. But you can speak about this. Don't struggle alone. So, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's a mental health condition that develops after exposure to trauma. And here are some of the signs of PTSD. So, huge stress, flashbacks, nightmares, distress, and you might even get physical symptoms, tachycardia or hypertension. You might feel like you want to avoid your thoughts, avoid yourself, avoid your emotions, avoid situations, avoid people. You just want to avoid anything that could trigger you. You might have distorted sense of self, whether, again, that's something I already covered. You might not feel connected to yourself. You might have fragmented recollection of what was actually happening. So you might not even remember the whole event. You might feel guilty, you might feel ashamed, you might be very fearful. You might engage in aggressive behavior, acting out, trying to move it past you. You might engage in reckless behaviors. Disassociation is another one. Anhedonia, so that means things that you used to enjoy, you're no longer enjoying. So these are just some of the symptoms of PTSD. Once again, don't struggle alone. You can talk to someone about this.